Particularly draining for me would be anytime that I have to like stand on my feet for a long extended period of time. Or any like concerts. My husband and I went to Rufus Du Sol this summer in Pasadena at the Rose Bowl, and I knew I had to prepare ahead of time. And it was kind of draining, but it was also so like exciting. But then after the fact, it's when you're in the moment, you're energized and you're overstimulated, and then it's almost like a overstimulation hangover, and making sure that I get rest and that I rest my feet and things like that. But I'm pretty proud of myself, I have to say.
This is Rock Bottom with Ryan. No sugarcoating, no filters. The pain, the chaos, the truth. No bullshit. Just recovery.
Hey everyone, I just want to say that this episode is brought to you by Sober Strong Apparel, our proud sponsor. It is not just lifestyle wear, it's battle gear. Heavyweight tees, hoodies, and gear for the ones who draw a hard line. Clean, sober, no compromise. We rep sobriety like a badge of honor, and every piece you throw on says you're a part of the crew that doesn't back down. And every order fuels 10% to treatment facilities, which I think is amazing because a lot of us who are in recovery and a lot of us who are sober now went to treatment facilities, including myself. So I just love that 10% goes to that cause. And the clothing is incredible. Incredibly thick, packaged well, incredible material. I mean, it's like the softest clothes I've ever seen. And so not only does it look good, feel good, but it's for a good cause. And I really respect and appreciate what this company represents. And, you know, it doesn't have to be just for people who are in recovery to rock the brand. I think anybody who supports the sobriety lifestyle, the recovery community, who has loved ones in recovery, I think it's really important to support the brand, you know? And at checkout on SoberStrongApparel.com, enter Rock Bottom, all capital, Rock Bottom, at checkout for an additional 10% off. I love this brand, love to rep it every day. It's comfortable, feels good to wear it, looks good. I mean, it's amazing. So I just love what this company represents. And thank you so much for watching this episode. Have an amazing day and a happy holidays. All right, happy holidays and welcome to Rock Bottom with Ryan. I'm here with Gretchen today. Gretchen, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing great, doing great. I'm excited to spend the holidays sober for the second time in my life. So this will be great.
Yes, awesome.
Yeah. So a couple quick questions. What is your sober date?
July 15th, 2022.
Awesome. So about 3.5 years now you got? Awesome. Cool. So what was your drink or drug of choice?
Chardonnay.
Strictly Chardonnay, huh?
Specifically Chardonnay. Boxed wine from Trader Joe's, one of the big leaders from Kendall Jackson, Yellowtail. Those were my go-tos. I'm also from Wisconsin, so I kind of have beer in my blood as well.
Gosh. I hear that a lot. Like I've interviewed quite a few people from Wisconsin and it's like, yeah, you know, there's just as many bars as houses out there apparently. So it's like
Exactly.
a lot of drinking goes on in Wisconsin, which I'm like, isn't it near Chicago? I mean, there's a lot of surrounding places, but I don't know.
I think people do it to stay warm in the cold and to give them something to do because there's nothing to do when it's so cold.
Oh, so Chardonnay, box Chardonnay. So I think I would buy that sometimes when I would, actually my last bender was all boxed wine. Like I would buy the box, I'd take the bag out of the box and I would literally keep it under my bed. That's how bad it got. And I would just like pour it into my mouth directly because I needed it that bad. But I remember one of the boxes I accidentally got was Chardonnay and I was just like, this does not taste like Pinot Gris, you know. But Black Box and Franzia, those were like my best friends for a while. But
yes, I understand.
How much? So can you kind of go into, say, what was your childhood like and what was it like when you first kind of started drinking?
Yeah, so I had a wonderful childhood. I grew up with two parents who were very loving. They're still married. I grew up in a log house in the woods of Wisconsin and have an older brother who's 3 years older than me. And alcohol was very not encouraged, mostly from my mom because she was afraid that it would be a problem for either my brother or I or both.
Rightfully so.
And it definitely was. It was a problem for both of us. And yeah, loving parents, didn't really grow up around alcohol. But when I went to France when I was 17, I got drunk for the first time off of Heineken beer. And I remember kind of just feeling like, whatever. And I didn't really actually get into drinking. I didn't drink really in high school. It wasn't until I turned 21 and moved to Los Angeles and worked in Hollywood that I really started to, be exposed to the party scene and rely on my Chardonnay at night. And so I would say it was really like my early 20s that I was really starting to get introduced to it.
Yeah.
And I think part of that is because I was on my own and I wasn't, I didn't
Nobody
really,
supervising you.
nobody supervising. Yeah, for sure. So I felt like it was just this giant playground, especially living in Los
Yeah.
Angeles. And yeah, that was really where it started. And what started as fun in my 20s ended up to be the new normal in my 30s, which ended up to be high functioning dependency in my 40s.
Wow. Okay. So it started off when you were younger, more experimental until you got to like drinking age and you moved to LA. Was that intentions to work in Hollywood and you had aspirations over there?
Yeah, my childhood dream when I was a little girl, I was 5 years old, and I said to myself, I want to live in Southern California and I want to dress the movie stars. And I made that happen at the young, ripe age of
That's
21
awesome.
and really set the stage for a life of a lot of ups and downs and highs and lows, peaks and valleys, and ultimately led me to my sobriety.
Wow. So like what was your experience like? You moved to LA from Wisconsin, which is like a huge culture shock, I would assume. And kind of like releasing you out into the wild basically. Cuz my little sister actually she passed away of a fentanyl overdose a while back. She had moved to LA to dress like music artists and stuff. So she was doing that
Yeah.
for a while, but then happened to get back into fentanyl. But so I'm a little familiar with it, but not completely. But what was your experience like going into that atmosphere? Like, did you already have friends over there and you just started working, or what was that like?
So I moved out with a friend of mine, and I actually moved directly from Minnesota because I went to college in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And a couple of us decided, hey, let's go out to LA. One of the friends got into the art school in Pasadena, this really prestigious art school. So he was already out in California, and the rest of us followed suit. And I lived with this girl named Jennifer. And I didn't get to dress the movie stars right away. I had to kind of work my way up through that. And ultimately, did that and was living my dream life. And then I fell in love and moved from Los Angeles to Oklahoma City. And that was a very interesting turn of events that no one saw coming. But he was in the military, he was a Navy pilot, and we fell in love. And so I moved to Oklahoma City and was married for about 5 years, and we have a beautiful son together. Our son is 18 years old. And then life happened and we moved to Maryland because he got into test pilot school. And from there I found out he was actually cheating on me.
Wow.
So we parted ways and I suddenly became a single mom overnight. And I was a single mom for 8 years before I remarried. And so that was only fueling the fire of the alcohol too. I didn't really realize it at the time,
Starting to numb yourself
but
subconsciously.
yeah, absolutely numbing myself and numbing the pain and the trauma of just life. And it's important that you do know, I'm not sure if you'll ask this question, but I do want your listeners to know a very important part of this was in 2020 when I embarked on a spiritual awakening that kind of found me. I realized I was a highly sensitive person. And
I
are
saw
you
that.
familiar with that? Have you ever
I
heard?
saw that on your profile, so I was going to ask about that
Yeah.
immediately, actually. So, can you describe what the
Yeah.
spiritual embarkment was and how you
Yeah.
became
So,
a highly sensitive person? Because I don't know it as a label. I just know what a sensitive person is. So, yeah.
right. Absolutely. during my awakening in 2020, my mom had come out during COVID to help with my son because I was still working. And my son, of course, was on lockdown from COVID. And my mom and I kept talking about how sensitive we are and how we need a lot of downtime and how we get overstimulated. And she went back to Wisconsin and she sent me a video of a TED talk. And she said, Gretchen, you've got to watch this right away. This is actually a thing. We are highly sensitive people. And I watched it, and all of a sudden, all of this curiosity, this relief, this joy, this excitement, all of the feelings kind of came over me. And I was like, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense. And I finally understood myself. About a year later, I realized that I was drinking a beer on that morning that she sent me that TED talk. It was a Sunday morning at like 10 or 11 a.m. And it was that year later that I realized and I made the connection. I've been using alcohol to numb my sensitivity. And to explain what high sensitivity is, all humanity and all animals have sensitivity, but highly sensitive people are we're 30% of the population, and we have a nervous system that is more finely tuned than
Okay.
others. Meaning we have a depth of processing where we process things very deeply. We have a rich inner world. We get overstimulated or over aroused or overwhelmed easily. We experience empathy and emotions very deeply, and we also pick up on subtle details like we can feel the energy shift when someone walks in the room. We can sense their moods, and we pick up on things that others may miss. And so highly sensitive people, it's not all women either, I will say. It's 50% male and 50% female of that 30%. And it was in that moment that I thought, my gosh, I've been using alcohol to like numb this part of me. And then suddenly everything started to make sense. And I started to kind of reverse engineer my life. And as they say, we live life forward, but we understand it backwards. And that was really that pivotal moment for me. And that led to so much, right? It led to, if I'm doing it, there has to be other people doing this too, and they might not realize
Yeah.
it.
So you started to want to talk about it more, learn about more, and all that.
I did. I did. I got really curious about it, and I got really excited and really ready to learn about it. And I had also simultaneously at this time been developing from the drinking and from being a woman in perimenopause, started to have a lot of health issues. I was having a lot of gut issues. I had candida overgrowth, leaky gut syndrome, gut dysbiosis, histamine intolerance, all just fancy words for like feeling like shit.
Are they how
And
much of them
so
were like related to drinking, do you think?
I would say a lot of them were related to my drinking. Also, some of it being my high
Yeah,
sensitivity.
a lot of it's related
And
to stress.
I'd always been a, yeah, I'd always been a really healthy, active person. I've always worked out. I've always ate healthy, but I was numbing with mostly Chardonnay and sometimes chocolate. But I do believe that a lot of my health issues, simultaneously, like I said, because of the perimenopause, which is common for women at this stage in their life to develop some of these issues. But I was just a hot mess. And so I got catapulted into curiosity. I'm like, what the hell is going on? I have to figure this out. I want to figure this out. And I'm ready to dig into
Yeah.
this.
Wow.
So I
So I'm
did.
curious, this might be a random question. I'm not sure if you guys talk about it a lot, but like how does highly sensitive people does it relate to also being an empath as well?
Yes. So great question. And it does come up a lot. So empaths have a lot of, they have strong empathy, and highly sensitive people, one of our characteristics is strong empathy. However, and this was where it kind of gets a little confusing, is not all highly sensitive people are considered deep empaths, because empaths actually take on the pain and the burden of someone else. They take it on as if it's their own. Whereas highly sensitive people, we pick up on that, but we don't always take on all of that pain. And for me, I have a pretty good boundary. I have a pretty good sense of what's mine and what isn't mine to carry. So But yes, to answer your question, it is related, but there's just kind of that gray area of, not all highly sensitive people are full blown empaths.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
And it's also important to note too that highly sensitive people, it's not a disorder. High sensitivity is not a disorder or is not a disease. It's simply an innate trait that one is born with. So, I believe, and research has proven too, that environment does have something to do with that. But it's just the way that we're wired. And it's not autism. It's not, like I said, it's not a disorder. It's not a disease. It's just it's the way our body is wired.
Okay. Interesting. So what are like the first, like most significant traits, obvious traits of somebody who was wondering, say right now, if I was wondering if I was a highly sensitive person, what traits would I look at to be like, maybe I am, maybe I'm not? What would you say?
Great question. So, the characteristics of highly sensitive people are very compassionate. We're very intuitive. We're very creative. But the easiest way to learn and know if you or someone you know is highly sensitive is through the acronym DOES, DOES. And this is an acronym that was coined by Dr. Elaine Aron, who is really the pioneer of high sensitivity. Uh, She's a psychologist and an author. And D stands for depth of processing, like I was saying earlier. So thinking things through very thoroughly, making deep connections, and then reflecting extensively, like almost that rumination and processing on a deeper level. The O stands for the overstimulation or that overwhelm or over arousability, because we become easily overwhelmed by the sensory input that we're constantly processing, or crowds or loud, busy environments. We need more downtime to recharge. And the E stands for empathy, but also emotional intensity. And that is where we experience emotions deeply, both positive and negative. And being very highly attuned to others' feelings. And then that S is for sensing the subtle. So we notice the small details, the nuances in art. We're very moved by nature, by music, by beauty, and other people's moods that, like I said, the non-highly sensitive person may not notice. So that's the easiest way, is through that DOES acronym.
Okay, interesting. So, can you take me through how does sensitivity, or how do you experience emotions compared to others? Like an example of like something that a regular person who is not a HSP would react to something compared to you.
Yeah. So we notice everything. you
Highly on
know,
alert.
I highly on alert. We are constantly processing information and stimuli, and we don't, always realize it. So if I walk into a room full of people, I can already smell the woman's perfume standing over there. I already noticed that this husband and wife are not in it. They've already probably had a fight on the drive
Wow.
to the party. I've noticed someone's blouse that is their buttons are uneven. Very, very
Where?
very aware and very detailed, because we're picking up on so much. And some people may not notice that. And whereas highly sensitive people, and it is a spectrum, it is a spectrum. So I'm on the higher side of the sensitivity. So I'm going to notice a lot more. And because I no longer numb, everything is amplified. However, I'm also regulated, so I know how to process it so that I don't get overwhelmed as easily as I used to when I would drink.
Okay. That was my next question. Is like, how do you recharge after an emotional or sensory overload?
The biggest thing for me is how I start my morning. How I start my day sets the tone, and that is how I regulate, especially as a woman, like I said, in perimenopause. So I start my day with, 40 to 50 grams of protein in the morning. I meditate, I journal, and it doesn't need to be this long, like 30-minute, hour long thing. I'm very intentional about my time, and I make sure that I work out a lot. So I've always been that way. So I move my body daily, and I also get outside every day and I touch nature. I hug the palm trees. Like, I have no shame in my game. So I'm pretty aware of what it takes for me to have a regulated nervous system from the beginning of my day. But I also know that if I'm going to a party, or if I'm going to something that I'm going to be on my feet, or I'm going to have to be social, I'll take a 20-minute power nap. I will, make sure there again I have that protein, make sure I'm hydrated.
Mental
And
preparation.
Yeah, it's mental preparation. And honestly, too, Ryan, like I feel that because I have such a good rhythm with this now since I've been sober for over 3 years, like things don't bother me like they used to with my sensitivity. And high sensitivity is my greatest gift. And here I was numbing that, or I was running from it because I was overstimulated and I was working in retail. And so I was overstimulated from that environment and from being a single mom. So I've done a really good job of setting my day up for success so that my nervous system can handle what comes at me. And I know what to do if I'm starting to get overstimulated. I just, go in the bathroom and just, have some quiet time or whatever for 5 minutes if I'm at a party. And I'm actually the other thing I want to mention too is not all highly sensitive people are shy or introverted. That
That was
seems to be
another
a
question. Yeah, I
misconception.
was gonna say.
Yeah, so I'm not. I'm an ambivert. I'm a mix of both introvert and extrovert. So I have no problem, walking into a room full of people and talking to people. But because of that overstimulation and that engagement and that being on, I do know that I can't do that for like 8 hours. I
Yeah,
have to be
yeah,
intentional about the time. But yeah, we're highly sensitive people are a gift to society because this is a non-HSP friendly world that we are navigating as best we can. And I hope that anyone listening that is resonating with this message that may have questions about sensitivity that you do look into it further because not a lot of people know about this. And I'm 47 and I found out, when I was 44. And my mom's a nurse and she had never heard about it. So
yeah.
it's gaining traction, I think, through social media and through just, conversations that we're having through podcasts like this, but it's nothing to be ashamed of. And it's nothing to, we don't want to label or pathologize every little thing about us, but it is nice to have a framework so that you can live your life and be prepared for the day that you're not numbing out anymore.
Exactly. Are there specific environments that are especially draining or calming for you? One versus the other?
Calming for me, but also ironically energizing is the beach. I live in Huntington Beach in Orange County, California, and the beach is my happy place.
I
That's
can
why I
tell.
left the
Your
cold
profile pic,
to be
great
here.
beach picture.
Particularly draining for me would be anytime that I have to like stand on my feet for a long extended period of time. Or any like concerts. My husband and I went to Rufus Du Sol this summer in Pasadena at the Rose Bowl, and I knew I had to prepare ahead of time. And it was kind of draining, but it was also so like exciting. But then after the fact, it's when you're in the moment, you're energized and you're overstimulated, and then it's almost like a overstimulation hangover and making sure that I get rest and that I rest my feet
Yeah,
and things like that. But I'm pretty proud of myself. I have to say, I've done a good job of knowing what I need and listening to my body. And that's the other thing because we are so self-aware,
yeah,
we know what we need,
yeah,
but it was drowned out by my alcohol and I was a nightly drinker. I mean, for over 2 decades I had wine every night.
yeah,
So, my brain has had to rewire through neuroplasticity. And so, yeah, it's definitely worth it on the other side because the spiral and the mental gymnastics of drinking with high sensitivity, it was just fueling the fire and it was not a good mix.
Wow. So, okay. So I'm curious, you kind of spoke about a past relationship that obviously didn't end well, and then your new relationship. So speaking of, how's being highly sensitive affected your relationships as a whole? Like, are they very understanding,
Yeah.
not understanding? How's that?
Yes. So I found out I was highly sensitive while I was married to my second husband. And I was like wearing it like a badge of honor once I found out. And I was like a kid in a candy shop. I printed off the materials from the website and from one of this bloggers that I followed. And I'm like, babe, my gosh, read this. I'm so excited to share this with you. There was a part of me that because it was still new for me, I wasn't sure. And because my marriage was new, I wasn't sure how he would take it or like what he would think. I mean, here I thought it was great, but what if he thought it sucked, right? And he was so understanding about it and he still is. And he's like, yeah, that's totally you, babe. And I'm like, Oh my gosh, I know. And it was like this relief. And yeah, he's very supportive. And one of the things with high sensitivity is we do need a lot of downtime to recharge. And thankfully, he's the same way. He's like, yeah, no, we can totally like, no hard feelings if you need to like go in the room and have some quiet time to yourself. And so he's very understanding. And I think that if a person doesn't know this about themselves, once they find out that they are highly sensitive, things will start to kind of click and make sense in their relationships. Like, so this is why you need to do this. And if that other person is open and understanding to it, there again, it can be a framework for the path forward so that you can honor the other person's needs.
Yeah, it's kind of like love languages and stuff like that. Just kind of being on
Exactly.
the same page
Yeah.
with people.
That's
Yeah.
exactly.
So that
Yes.
was
Yes.
brings me to my next questions. Like, what ways has being highly sensitive been like a superpower for you? Like,
I've harnessed it to help me quit drinking, Ryan. And that is the work that I do now. I work with highly sensitive women to gently help them release alcohol. But for me, it is my superpower because it's where I'm unique and different. And I always knew I was different. And I always knew that I wasn't like a lot of my friends or a lot of the people in my, maybe in my grade school or in high school or things like that. And I was never unpopular. I was popular, but I always knew I was different. And I always went the other way from like the mainstream. I just kind of always paved my own way. And so for me, my high sensitivity has really like I've harnessed it and I actually like took it by the horns and kind of like made it my bitch, right? Like I used it to help me quit drinking and what and how I did that is because I got curious about myself. I got curious about why I was drinking, why I wanted to quit drinking, and what would happen if I didn't quit drinking, and how my high sensitivity wasn't an excuse. It was a reason why because I never really related to the term alcoholic because it just never felt I just didn't feel like that. And there were no park bench moments, there were no DUIs, there were no dramatic things such as anything that you would think of or what society makes us think of with alcoholic, but I realized that it was me just trying to calm the chaos of my world, my inner world, my outer world, and I'm much happier as a highly sensitive person without alcohol than I was with alcohol.
good to
Absolutely.
know. So you think just a little bit or a lot when it came to associating your highly sensitive side with alcoholism? You think it was all correlated or just a little?
There was a large portion of it. When I got into my why, and I wrote so many reasons why I was drinking, and throughout that process, of course, I was in therapy and I was working with a highly sensitive person coach at the time. And we all have trauma, right? And I had a lot of trauma from being raised with a brother with schizophrenia, which the medical community would call schizophrenia. And so I had some isolated incidences from my high school years that were very traumatic for
Hmm.
me. And that coupled with high sensitivity, coupled with being a single mom, coupled with life, just all of that was really too much for me. And I do think my high sensitivity was a lot of it because like I said, I worked retail and I was a clothing buyer for a boutique in Newport Beach. And I worked there for many years. And prior to that, I had worked at other retailers. And I would come home from my day from being so overstimulated. And it was like I was already thinking about the wine on my way home, right? Like I was already thinking about it probably at lunchtime and thinking, oh, I got to go home. And then that was my pause button, right? And that only just, like I said earlier, fueled the fire. And then I would tell myself stories like, it's like I knew I didn't want to do it, but I wanted to do it, but I didn't know how to stop doing it. And so then I would tell myself stories, but you're doing the job of two people. You're a single mom. You work out, you eat healthy. Like this is the one thing that you can do that will just, we'll let it
Yeah.
slide. And it was until it wasn't.
Yeah. So when did it become, because you said you were highly functional, when did it become to the point where you're just like, my God, this is like starting to take over my life? Like, what was it like the last time you drank and you decided, I'm done with this?
Yeah. So 2020 was the pivotal moment where I learned of my high sensitivity. 1 year later is when I connected the dots that I was drinking a beer that Sunday morning that I watched that TED talk explaining high sensitivity. And from that day on, I had tried to quit. I had tried to quit unsuccessfully. And I would go off and I would quit for like 3 days or like 4.5 days. And then I would always make my way back and find my way back to wine or the beer or whatever, margaritas. And it was in July of 2022 where I was full blown like miserable. I had gained like 20 pounds. I did not recognize the woman in the mirror. I was ashamed. I was hiding bottles. I was hiding receipts. I was doing the secret sips. And I had all of this physical health issue. I had the emotional turmoil that I was already overthinking because of my high sensitivity. And then I had the physical. So I had a lot of like bloating and a lot of, itchy. I was itchy and just, I was miserable. And I was watching, I'll never forget it. It was in July. I was watching my Bravo, The Real Housewives. And that morning I had said, no, we're done drinking. We're done drinking, not tonight. And that morning I said that. And that night I ended up drinking. And I don't remember how much I had, but it was more than enough. And I woke up and I had been having like 3 a.m. anxiety spikes with blood sugar spikes and crashes
Were you
and
having withdrawal symptoms?
not withdrawals, no, but just the overwhelm or the anxiety from the blood sugar ups and downs, which is another problem for women in perimenopause
Yeah.
too. So you can see where I'm going with this. It
It's
was
a
just a
snowball
perfect
effect. Yeah.
storm. Yeah. And then the next morning I woke up and I reached my what I call my wrecking ball moment, my never fucking again moment where I said this has got to stop and it stops now. And I took my word for it and I was like, okay, here we go. Like this is it. You're doing this thing. And I finally did it. And I got curious about why. I got curious about everything. And that was the day that it all changed. And these last 3 years, I don't crave alcohol anymore. I don't crave the numbing out behavior because I've done so much rewiring through neuroplasticity through my brain. I don't miss it at all. I wish I had done it sooner. I wish I had quit sooner for many reasons, but I'm glad I quit when I did. It was my path, it was my time, and I can't imagine ever drinking ever again, and I have the choice. I'm somebody that I say that I can drink as much as I want whenever I
Yeah.
want, I just choose not
It's good.
to.
And just
That's how my
kind of
stance
like,
on
I
it.
didn't drink today. Maybe won't drink tomorrow. Just kind of continue being sober
Yeah,
one day at a time.
I don't have any interest in it, and it's kind of my soul's purpose now. I've got this whole, like, thing that I'm doing with it and helping others. So yeah, not interested, not triggered by NA beers, not triggered by non-alcoholic wine. I was so ready for it to leave my life that I never wanted it to come back.
So in order to replace that time you were spending drinking, you just spent that working on neuroplasticity and just working on yourself and rewiring. And did you set up like a whole
Yeah.
new routine or go to meetings or what else did you do?
Never did any meetings. No, I'm not your typical like girl that got sober. I mean, I don't maybe necessarily think that there is a typical journey because
Everyone's
everyone's
different.
path
Yeah.
is their own. Never went to AA, never resonated with me. I did it all myself. And that is one of the reasons why I do what I do now, because had I had a community of like minded women, of highly sensitive women that we could kind of air our dirty laundry together, it would have been a lot easier. I did talk to my best friend Sarah about it because she was going through the same thing at the same time as well. But other like that was like, we didn't talk about it. And I wasn't really even talking about it with my husband. I mean, I was a closet drinker. I mean, you would never know that I had a problem. In fact, my husband was like, "Oh, I didn't realize you had such a problem." I'm like, "Yeah, that's because I hid it from
Yeah.
you because I'm really good." So, yeah, I took that time and I just invested in myself and I invested in my health for myself, for my son, for my future, and ultimately just ended up, I feel better now at 47 than I did in my
Yeah.
20s in a lot of
Same,
ways.
same. At 38, I feel 10 times healthier than I
Yeah,
felt 10 years ago.
you know,
Yeah.
yeah,
um,
it's a beautiful
it is so
thing.
beautiful. I agree. No, it's amazing. So say that a girl approaches you right now and asks you to help them with their being a highly sensitive person, or asks you about it. How do you start working with somebody?
So I have a community called the Sanctuary. And the Sanctuary is a community of like minded, highly sensitive women that can land, hang out, get support. And within the Sanctuary, I have what's called the Stop Numbing Collective. And the Stop Numbing Collective is the first one is Stop Numbing the Foundation, which is the first like 7 to 10 days in her breaking free. And it also goes into the trait of high sensitivity. And then after that, I have Stop Numbing, Start Living, which is it's a 30-day course, but it's self-led, and it's on a drip. So each day there's just one thing, one lesson, one 5 to 10 minute lesson a day with journal prompts. I'm huge on journal prompts because that's how I rewired my brain. So I turned my mess into a message and created this to, help others. And so that would be how they could do it. And then I'm working on a third course right now, which is for the woman after the bottle, which is really like that identity work. And, we're not the same woman that we are when we start the program. We're not the same woman that we are when we've lost the weight. And I have a background in fashion and style. And so I, of course, want to incorporate some of that into this course as well, because for a woman, when she breaks free from alcohol and she empowers and harnesses her high
I want to
sensitivity,
feel liberated.
it is so liberating on such a deep soul level. And there's so much that happens in this woman's life in general at this stage, where I'm going to be an empty nester in a couple months. We're finally, as highly sensitive women, we put everyone else before us. Now it's our time. Now it's and they don't have to be in perimenopause to work with me, but it's really that 38 to, like 52-year-old woman who is realizing that alcohol does not have a place in her life anymore. It can be too an exploration. So the foundation, they can actually drink on the foundation, because there again, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just giving you tools on how you can determine your path based on what has worked for myself and others. So the foundation is getting curious on the why, getting curious on what would happen if I don't, and having those conversations to get the ball rolling. Because like I said, I didn't have anyone showing me the way. I listened to some podcasts here and there, and I read Alcohol Explained by William Porter. I read This Naked Mind by Annie Grace, and I listened to the podcasts and things of that nature. But ultimately, it was like I was so ready, Ryan, that I was determined, because I reached my wrecking ball moment.
Yeah. No, I keep hearing about The Naked Mind by Annie Grace, and I've reached out to her. I really want to interview her someday, but apparently she's had
Yeah,
a
I'm
huge
sure
impact
she.
on so many people that are sober now. So it's pretty
Yeah.
incredible. So I need to read that book myself.
Yep.
But
Yes.
so how can loved ones be supportive of somebody that is highly sensitive? Like, how can they understand it and be supportive?
They can understand it by being open to us sharing about it and sharing the information that we've learned about it. It would be like if someone had, if they had something health wise that they needed to explain to their family members, to be open to it the same way they would with high sensitivity, be open to hearing our needs and helping us by supporting us so that we can honor our needs as highly sensitive people. Because if we ain't happy, and nobody around us going to be happy either in the family structure, because it's a framework that needs to be integrated. It's a trait that needs to be integrated into life and into how one shows up in their daily life. And so family and friends, be open to listening. They share something with you, read it, listen to it, because we're just trying to help you understand us and our needs better.
Okay, it's a great answer. What's the biggest myth about being highly sensitive? You may have already answered this, but by saying
I
we're
already,
not all introverts, but is there any other myths that people or stigmas that people might think that aren't true?
Well, it's not a bad thing. And I think people think that, not all people, but I think people think that it's a bad thing because sensitivity is such like a, it's not cool in today's world. Or it's like, if you're a guy with high sensitivity, you're not man enough or you're not masculine. And that is so not the case. So I think that people, when they hear that, some people actually think that it's an imaginary thing. Some people think, oh, it's just all in your head. Oh, you're just, oh, it's just whatever. And it's really not. And so I say to that, hold the judgment. Like, you have no idea what it's like to be a highly sensitive person in a world that is just very chaotic and gruesome and, doom and gloom everywhere. We feel that. So I think, like I said earlier with the introvert, we're not all introverts. It's not all women. It's not a bad thing. And it is very real, contrary to what people think that it's not. It is very real.
Okay, so like since you have such a huge understanding of it now and you feel more empowered just knowing and understanding it better, do you still have moments where you feel like you've had to toughen up and just hide it or power through it?
I haven't had to toughen up or hide it, but what I have learned to do is get really good at boundaries,
Okay.
both personal boundaries and boundaries with others. I have really learned to step into my power during this time and with my high sensitivity, honor it and not be ashamed of it and not mask it. I spent over 2.5 decades masking it, unbeknownst to me, but I was masking my high sensitivity. And now it's like, this is who I am. Take it or leave it.
Yeah.
I don't get paid to care. Like, I am who I am. I am liberated on a soul level and I'm unapologetic about
It's
it.
great. Yeah, I noticed that you feel so free when you just get comfortable in your own skin and accept who you are, you know. It's an amazing
Yes.
feeling. So I can relate to that. So do you ever come across people that aren't just alcoholics, but they're using other drugs to numb their highly sensitive side? Or is it just
Yeah. So
alcoholics?
my wheelhouse is really alcohol and like food. Before I got coaching certification for highly sensitive people, I was in nutrition school. And so I'm actually a certified transformational nutrition and mental wellness coach. And I'm a highly sensitive person coach. But my wheelhouse is primarily numbing with shopping, chocolate, sugar. Sugar's a really big deal. Alcohol. I don't really have a lot of people in marijuana, but I don't like the big street drugs or anything like that. Like that is not my wheelhouse. And I don't claim to be an expert in that by any means. For that, I would say I might not be the best fit. Numbing behavior is numbing behavior, but it's really the work that I do is really helping them see and understand themselves on a sensitivity level and how that can play into the behaviors and the choices we make around the numbing
Okay.
behavior.
So one of the last questions is what advice would you give to listeners right now, since we got really on the highly sensitive person topic, which I love? I could talk about this forever, honestly. I find it really interesting. But what advice would you give
Fascinating.
to not only alcoholics, but somebody who is listening, who might think they have potential to be a highly sensitive person? What advice would you give to them right now?
My advice would be to check out my website, thealcoholfreehsp.com, and poke around on there. I have a quiz. It's a Am I a highly sensitive person, like a checklist? And they can go on there and take that checklist and they can learn about more about high sensitivity, and the does acronym is on my website as well, and explore on there and see if the sanctuary feels like a place where they want to land. I'm not sure, Ryan, when this episode is airing, but I do have a January reset starting, the Stop Numbing January reset. You could think of it as like a dry January, but it's more of, it's not with all the vanity metrics and competition that us highly sensitive people, we don't need any more of that. We got enough going on in our mind. So that January reset is a place to land as well, where they can explore their relationship with alcohol deeper. But I would also recommend two books. These are also on my website. The first would be The Highly Sensitive Person by Dr. Elaine Aron. I referenced her earlier. And the second one would be the book Sensitive by Jen Graneman and Andre Solo. Yeah. And those two books are really a deep dive into the trait of high sensitivity. The highly sensitive person is a little bit more medical terminology, and it's written, it's kind of, you might need to jump around in it a little bit, but those are two really great resources. I also have a podcast launching in January called the Alcohol Free HSP Podcast.
Awesome.
Which is the wellness journey through high sensitivity, sobriety, sober curiosity. And of course, we're going to talk a little bit about fashion, and we're going to talk about gut health and all the things.
I like it.
So I would invite your listeners to check that out as well. That's dropping January 7th.
Awesome. All right. I'll do my best to get this episode out before the end of the month then. So, yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on.
No pressure, no rush.
I'm doing it. I just took a note to write it down. No, I really appreciate you being on and talking about it and being so transparent and talking about a topic that is probably a highly sensitive topic to some people. So I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
It is. Thank you so much for having me, Ryan. Great to be here.
Oh, would you like to shout out your Instagram handle if anybody wants to reach you?
Yes. So both my Instagram and my website are the Alcohol Free HSP, and my website, thealcoholfreehsp.com. I'm on TikTok. I have a YouTube channel. Everything is the Alcohol Free HSP.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Rock Bottom with Ryan. No bullshit, just recovery.